Good morning. Glad all of you managed to get here before we have the big giant blizzard come blowing through, huh? How would you like to be upstate? I got one of my friends from high school that moved to Montana. He's 50 miles from the Canadian border. And he'd been sick the last couple of 2-3 weeks, some sort of bacterial infection. So I checked in with him and asked him something about, I don't know. And by the way, this guy spends his entire summer months chopping wood so he can be warm in the wintertime. I said something about, I don't know, some temperature, I forget what it was. He said, oh no, he says, it's just the right kind of temperature. And I think it was like 36 or 40 degrees. He said, that's good working temperature. And I'm just kind of like, oh. I'm not a cold weather person. I'll tell you that right now. You guys just got in from the cold weather too, didn't you? So it's Jim and Carol back there. So, yeah, I guess they say the same thing about us living in the heat. So, anyway, this morning, yeah, I started to do this a couple of weeks ago, but then I decided, no, I wanted to put in a little more speaking about what we're going to talk about this morning. I kind of wanted to fill in a few more gaps. The last couple of weeks, I spoke on the word choose, the word chose, and the word choice. We all use that every day of the week, don't we? Okay? When you wake up in the morning, or maybe even subconsciously at night, which side do you lay on? Or do you just lay on your back? Everything's a choice. We use choice constantly, but we don't really think about it, do we? Except maybe, I'll use the example of TV again, when there's some filthy commercial that comes on, some advertisement that comes on. Do you just change the channel real quick? Do you turn the sound down? Or do you not even have a TV, so you have to put up with that sort of nonsense? 20 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, you would not have seen the type of advertisements I see on TV now. It's just unbelievable. Not so much on radio, but on TV. And it's, again, part of it's the power of influence. And that influence is to get you to choose not to turn the channel or turn down the sound, those sort of things. They want you to hear this. Because what's the purpose? What is the whole purpose of Satan? It's to break your willpower down. Okay? So it's a contest. Whose willpower is stronger? Yours? Or the one that wants to take you down with him? So, last week we spoke a little bit more about what's called the whole purpose of God. Well, this week I wanted to speak about what gets us to the point where we want to fulfill the whole purpose of God. You know, the purpose of us, why he put us here. So, and one of the very first things that comes to mind for me, I remember when I would run across the odd atheist or so, maybe in high school, in college, I ran across more atheists in college. And they would kind of laughingly say to you, well, why do you believe that stuff? And it's kind of like, well, at that point in time, I thought I had what it took to be able to refute or to give a reasonable answer for it. And I would say, well, I believe it. But why do you believe that stuff? Where's the proof? That's a bunch of fantasies. You know, this is all made up by a bunch of guys that want to rule over you. Anybody face that? Anybody ever here go face to face with somebody like that? No one? Couple? No? Oh yeah, there's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of argumentation that's put out there. But by the same token, if you will become a student of the Bible, there is adequate evidence to prove what is in here is actually historically correct. It actually works, actually does what it'll do. Oh, yeah. But what will this book do for you? What will it do for you? Will it keep you out of jail? Well, let's preface that with, if you follow its instructions, will it keep you out of jail? Hopefully here in the United States it will. There are a lot of countries in this world that if you believe in this book, they'll chop your head off for it before they brutalize you. Those sort of things. To believe in these things. What brought you to the point of belief? Some fancy guy up there preaching real nice? What actually brought you to believe that the Bible is what it is, says what it is, will do what it does? Anybody ever think about that? I remember the man that preached, his name is Johnny Ashworth. He's from Abilene, Texas. Drove 90 miles every Sunday, to preach at this little bitty church in Mundy, Texas. He said enough things. He provided enough proof. Then studies with one of my grandmothers. Next thing you know, I want to be baptized. Because why? I believed that baptism did something. What does baptism do for you? Well, what does it do? What is it meant to do? Wash away your sins. It is that simple. So, what leads us to this? To believe. Well, how do we even know what the meaning of the word believe is unless let's go to a definition and see if we understand what believe means. I chose the Webster Dictionary as the first explanation, and then the next one after that is the Cambridge Dictionary. Now, I don't want to get too technical, but a transitive verb, that means it has an object within the statement. It says to think that something is true, correct, or real. You think about this. Notice I use that word think. The definition says to think that something is true. Is this true? I would say that because you're sitting in here right now, hopefully listening and paying attention, that you would answer in the affirmative. You would confirm that this is true. So let's look at another definition of believe as a verb. Now this comes from the Cambridge Bible. It says to consider to be true or honest. True or honest. What was the name of, what was kind of one of the tags that we gave to one of our presidents here in the United States? They called him Honest. Honest Abe. Honest. And notice the name he had. Abe was short for Abraham. Okay? Honest Abe. To consider to be true or honest. And here I've copied in what the dictionary says. It says, believe the reports. Depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on. Oh, those other guys are telling you a bunch of lies. You got to believe me. Well, which one are the facts? Remember the TV show Dragnet? He didn't actually say this, but it's attributed to him. He says, nothing but the facts, ma'am. Nothing but the facts. We come back to this. How many facts are in here? A lot. If you'll just dig in and study it. Facts affect things whenever you talk to people about the Bible. Another part of the definition of believe is to accept the word or evidence of. In other words, here's what they used as kind of the words of it. He says, I believe you. Have you ever said, I believe you to somebody? I have. Have you ever said, I don't believe you? I can't believe that. I won't believe that. Says, and there's one other one says, couldn't believe my eyes. Well, this past week when they had the launch down there, before I'd just seen the contrail one time. This time stood out in the backyard, and there comes the contrail, and you could actually see a little dot in the sky flying away. That was SpaceX on the launch. And to tell you the truth, I couldn't believe that I could see that kind of distance with an object, which it's not that terribly big. Although you get up close to it, it is big. But you see this thing, and it looks like it's smaller than the head of a pin. And one of the thoughts that came to me is, I can't believe that we can see that far. Can you imagine the eyes of an eagle? They can see things on the ground when it's at high altitude like that. So your eyes, it's hard to believe that we're built like that. Then when you use believe as what's called an intransitive verb, it says to accept something as true, genuine, or real. I suggest to you that you do believe this, or else why are you here? Maybe you're here because you're inquisitive and you want to know about what all this Christian stuff is. What is all this? What does the Bible actually say? Well, it's real helpful to open it up and read it, isn't it? And when you don't understand it, think about it a little bit. Dive into this thing. Figure out what it's actually saying. Another part of it is to have a firm or wholehearted religious conviction or persuasion. To have a firm or wholehearted religious conviction or persuasion. Well, I would suggest to you that the majority of us in here have been persuaded to have that kind of a conviction. Right? Why else would you be here? You could be at home watching TV or doing something else, whatever. The third part of it is to have a firm conviction as to the goodness, the efficacy, or the ability of something. And down there they gave an explanation of why they said that. It says belief in exercise. Does anybody in here think exercise is a bad thing? We got a belief that it is a good thing. Now I do believe you can get too much of anything, can't you? It'd be like saying I like a watermelon. Well, but I don't want to eat a trunk load at a time or the whole melon at a time. One other last part of this is to hold an opinion. To hold an opinion. Is there anybody in here that's opinionated? Just ask me, I'll tell you. My opinion is, Baldo over there, you're the ugliest man on earth, Baldo. Oh, wait a minute. I take that back. You're the most handsome man on earth. That's what your wife will say. Okay? But there's opinions, okay? The opinions. Has anybody ever given their opinion of you? I don't want to be around that guy. He's a real clown, Oh, boy, I can't wait to talk to this guy. Talk to this lady. Those sort of things. Opinions. Everybody's got an opinion, don't they? Is your opinion just like mine? Well, pretty much. But when you read Scripture, how many of us have ever sat down and talked to somebody about Scripture? You read the exact same sentence, and you get two different opinions. But there's a similarity in some of the opinions. Sometimes they're diametrically opposed to each other. In other words, 180 degrees out. In other words, this one goes this way, and this one goes, let's say, that way. This, they say, is way opinions. But do opinions really count? The Scriptures do what it says it'll do, if you allow it. That's one of the key factors here, if you allow it. Okay? Then there's another word. It's the word belief. We won't cover belief this morning. I just didn't have enough time. I just simply ran out of time to cover belief. But we'll just touch on it a little bit. But I wanted to bring out the explanation here. Belief is a noun. The other ones were verbs. Verbs denote action, don't they? A noun is a thing, isn't it? person, place, or a thing. Here, dictionary states, it's a state of mind or habit of mind in which trust or confidence is placed in some person or thing. Confidence. How much confidence do you have in this? How about someone that comes to church maybe once a month, every 6 months? Or they just say, oh, I'm a Christian. I got confidence. Well, what were we told about congregating? First day of the week. What was one of the purposes for that? You're speaking. Have the Lord's Supper. To remember. To honor the one that gave us this confidence. Belief again, as a noun. The feeling of being, now notice the first two words. The feeling of being certain that something exists or is true. The feeling of being certain that something exists or is true. The feeling of it. Well, anybody in here ever gone for a ride in a really fast car or a really fast motorcycle? When you get that feeling, when you've been mashed back in the seat and you can't move forward, you're pretty certain that you're in an object that can accelerate pretty fast. Okay? Then again, what is a certainty for you? We're certain that the sun will come up? Sun will go down? We have certainty, don't we? Are you certain that you'll be alive tomorrow to see it? How many people just last night may have lost their lives in a traffic accident somewhere? Do you think they were thinking, well, then tomorrow I won't be here? The older you get, the more you have a tendency to think about this. Will I be here tomorrow? How do I behave today? Those sort of things. And I put that in a category called stark reality. Because there's not one single one of us in here that's going to live forever. At least in the flesh. Right? Even those that don't believe in the Bible know that that is a certainty. It comes for us all. So they have that belief. It's developed there. Third thing, it says something that you believe, all religious and political beliefs should be respected equally. Hold on a minute. Let's read that again. Something that you believe, and it's in quotation marks, all religious and political beliefs should be respected equally. Well, do you agree with that? Should be respected equally. Well, everything's a choice. Yeah. It comes down to a choice because it's the dictionary is stating this. If there were one religion in the world that you would think that we better just, that one ought to be done away with. In your mind's eye, which one comes up in your mind? The one we're in here right now? There may be some people out there in this country, even within the confines of this town, that would say, no, they need to close the doors on that place. Let me repeat that one more time. Something that you believe, and let's apply this to what we're being told about equality and all this other stuff all the time now. All religious and political beliefs should be respected equally. Well, Christianity, absolutely. Yeah.
Because coming out, to me, disrespect would equal some type of anger or shunning, and you can't do that.
Yeah. Well, equal rights. Equal rights. Okay, I believe in equal rights. But, yes? absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And and then whenever somebody's not a non-believer and they have all these reasons why they don't believe, there's difficulty talking to people like that because it's
Well, there's an old saying, I got's my rights, and you can't trample on it. That's part of our Constitution.
like and sometimes people also don't want to hear the facts.
No, they don't.
They have the facts for themselves.
Yeah. So, with all of this, what do you do when someone's trying to take your religious rights from you? Because that's where a lot of this stuff is headed in this country. Hopefully some of that's going to come to a screeching halt here pretty quick. Well, the only way we can stand up for it is for us to stand up, not just sit here and talk about it. It takes action. Being a Christian takes action also, doesn't it? Just declaring yourself a Christian, well, that's fine and dandy. But what do you do with it? So, with all of this, turn to Matthew 21. I'm just going to go through these, and there's a couple of these examples that I purposely repeated. Okay? Matthew 21, let's pick up in verse 23. When he entered the temple, he being Jesus, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him while he was teaching and said, and notice, what was he doing? He was teaching and said, by what authority are you doing these things, and who gave you this authority? Jesus said to them, I will ask you one thing, which if you tell me, I will also tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John was from what source? From heaven or from men? And they began reasoning among themselves. Reasoning. What does that mean? Providing explanations to each other. Well, this is what I think, and this is what I think, and you over there think this, and blah, blah. And they began reasoning among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say to us, then why did you not believe him? And that's a question for the ages right there. Then why did you not believe him? Why does someone choose not to believe this? Is it a matter of evidence? Is it a matter of presentation? Just what is it that drives someone to say, no, I don't believe that? If we say from heaven, he will say to us, then why did you not believe him? But if we say from men, we fear the people, for they all regard John as a prophet. And answering Jesus, they said, we do not know. He also said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. But here's one of the key pieces right here where they say this. We do not know. Why didn't they know? How much evidence had already been presented at this point in time that Jesus was who he said he was, or who he is? Okay? Weren't they supposed to be the experts? So here they're wondering about, gee whiz, why can't we answer this question? And he's asking about belief. How many people will ask you, why do you believe? And what explanation can you give? Can you say, because I concretely believe these are the facts? This is a fact-filled book. Okay? Turn over to Matthew 27 and 42. By the way, while you're turning, hopefully I won't distract you too much. I looked up these words. The word believe occurs 8 times in Matthew. It occurs 15 times in Mark, 10 times in Luke, and then in John it appears 81 times. 81 times. You could add all the rest of those up together, and you're not going to match what John writes about the word belief in here, or believe. So in Matthew 27, let's read verse 42. Yeah, we can read a little more than 42, but he saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now, if he delights in him. For he said, I am the Son of God. And notice verse 44. The robbers who had been crucified with him were also insulting him with the same words. Let me ask you, verse 44. One of those robbers changed his mind, didn't he? What did he say? Yeah. Right there on the cross. One thing. Okay? But notice all of this. What are these guys saying? If you back all the way up, verse 38, and start there, we'll start there again. It says, at that time 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those passing by were hurling abuse at him, wagging their heads and saying, you who are going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. What are they actually doing? The word I'm thinking of starts with an M. They're mocking him. They're making fun of him, aren't you? Hey, hotshot, you got yourself up there, get yourself down. It ought to be easy for you if you who you say you are. If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross. In the same way the chief priest also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking him and saying, he saved others, he cannot save himself. Who is this guy? They're saying he's not, what they're saying in effect, he's not who he says he is. But apparently they hadn't been around long enough to see a lot of the things. Some of them had. Okay? So, let's turn over to Luke 20 and 5. We'll just pick up on verse 20, just at the first verse. This is Luke 20, verse 1. On one of the days while he was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel, the chief priest and the scribes with him, and preaching the gospel, the chief priest and the scribes with the elders confronted him. And they spoke, saying to him, let's stop right there for a second. Does this sound familiar to you? How many times have we read about this before? We've already read 2 times about this same occurrence, but we get a little more information here with the third occurrence where this is. And they spoke, saying to him, tell us about what authority you're doing these things, or who is the one who gave you this authority? Jesus answered and said to them, I will also ask you a question, and you tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or from men? They reasoned among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, why did you not believe him? There's that thing again. Why did you not believe him? I'll add this. Why do you not believe in the Bible? Verse 6, but if we say from men, all the people will stone us to death. What are they saying about that, about the people there? What are they saying about themselves? They're talking about death, aren't they? How would you like to be pelted to death with rocks? You think that might have put a little fear into them? So which one did they fear more? The people or Jesus? They reasoned among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, why did you not believe him? But if we say from men, all the people will stone us to death, for they are convinced that John was a prophet. They believed in John, believed so much that he was a prophet. Verse 7, so they answered that they did not know where it came from. Or were they hiding something? What do you think they might be hiding? They didn't want to admit to what? That the truth is staring them right in the face. They would have lost all of their privileges, all the money, everything that came with being a scribe at that point in time. Has anything really changed in our modern times? We're still the same way. So they answered, and they did not know where it came from. And Jesus said to them, nor will I tell you by what authority I do these things. Boy. So let's turn over to John 2:13 right quick. I may back up. I always am backing up on myself here. Well, let's just pick up in verse 12. It says, after this, he went down to Capernaum. He being Jesus. He and his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and they stayed there a few days. The Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and he found in the temple those who were selling oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. And he made a scourge of cords and drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And to those who were selling the doves, he said, take these things away. Stop making my Father's house a place of business. His disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house will consume me. The Jews then said to him, what sign do you show us as your authority for doing these things? Jesus answered them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. How many guys do you think, or those scribes, might have recognized what he was saying to them right then? It was predicted, wasn't it? It was told. Verse 20, the Jews then said, it took 46 years to build this temple, and you will raise it up in 3 days? Verse 21, but he was speaking of the temple of his body. So when he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this. And they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus had spoken. 3 days later, he comes back to life. Been almost 2,000 years since those events, isn't it? One man changed the course of most of the globe in this world. One man. And then through the efforts of some of the other people that truly, truly believed, they saw the miracles. They were imbued with some of the power to be able to continue this. Because if you only got 10 or 12 people running around, well, you think, well, gee whiz, those are a bunch of conspiracy nuts. How much are you going to believe those people? But what happens if they actually do the miracles? Well, the evidence shows us that these type of miracles continued. And what happened? The spread of what we call Christianity these days. Anybody remember what the very first Christians called themselves? Well, disciples is one, but they kind of called themselves something. The way. Followers of the way. Okay? The way to what? Eternal life. That's what it's about. I'll continue this next week. I'd hoped I'd gotten a little bit further along because there were a few things in John that I really wanted to cover. But If you would, study some in Acts. Pay attention to Paul. Listen to this. Or listen to when I say listen, what I'm talking about is in your mind. Listen to what the words are telling you. And I think you might find it quite interesting. So, to believe. That's your first step, isn't it? If you're told that you don't have to be baptized, that your mind is baptized when you believe, is that correct?
That's the word baptized, the word came from.
No.
It was written in Hebrew, Greek, and that it's immersion.
No. Learn what the word mikveh means. Anybody know what a mikveh is? It's like a bathtub. Because you don't want to approach. Excuse me?
You got to be submerged.
You got to be submerged, okay? But one of the purposes for this, the priest, especially the priest, before they would approach God, especially in the temple, they had to do what to themselves? Had to cleanse themselves. How do you approach God when he says, I will not allow sin in my presence? How do you get rid of it? That's the avenue that he told us. You clean yourself. Clean your mind. It's not, you could come out of the baptistry covered in mud. What are you cleaning? It's up here. There's another word that we'll discuss here pretty soon, and this goes with why you're a Christian, is the word resolve. R-E-S-O-L-V-E. Resolve. And this is one where you really start to dive into yourself about what kind of resolve do you have concerning my Christian beliefs. Anything I've said that's been wrong or in error, please let me know. Thank you very much.